Woke up humble, huh? It shows. I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. My name is Bob Darrow, and I am alcoholic. And I am a member in good standing of a group in Las Vegas, Nevada called Connect the Dots. And if you were to visit that group, the members of that group know that that's my home group by my actions. I have a sponsor, and if you were to ask my sponsor, he knows he sponsors me by my actions. If your sponsor is not sure they're your sponsor, they're not. Because all that's real in Alcoholics Anonymous and in my life is what I do. It's not what I intend or what I think. I'm delighted to be here. I want to thank Tim. Tim has been a great host. Spent a couple hours with him. I've got to know more about Tim than I ever knew I needed to know. The voice, Jason, when he said he was a cop, I thought, I love cops today. Cops have helped me out over the years in sobriety, protected my business, all kinds of stuff. But there was a time when I have this flaw that when I'm drunk, I can see how they need to be straightened out. Imagine being arrested by him. It'd be like being arrested by the Duck Dynasty. It was, That could be a whole reality show. I mean, Jesus. I feel remiss a little bit this weekend. It's not my fault. I got bronchitis. When I come to these conferences, it's always my intention and important to me to attend everything. And I went to bed yesterday afternoon and missed two of the speakers. That's not the way I do things. But I ran out of gas. I just couldn't do it. And I usually spend more time on one-to-one talking to people, and it's like this bronchitis has dimmed my light somewhat. And I all prayed up, hoping that God's going to shine through a little bit today. I don't know, because if He doesn't, it's going to be a phlegmy talk, I'll tell you. I'm supposed to talk about Step 12. There's so many aspects to Step 12, but I want to talk about the one that's probably been the most influential to me, and that's helping other drunks and being of service in AA. I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous as a young kid. I wasn't even old enough to take a legal drink. And I almost died because I was too selfish for AA. I didn't want to do anything I didn't feel like doing. I didn't know it. You could have asked me, Bob, why are you so selfish? I'm not selfish. I was a me-first person, and self-obsessed, self-absorbed people like myself, we don't do anything unless we feel like doing it. Because self-obsessed people run their life on how they feel. And I was that guy, and so consequently, I never helped anybody. I never made amends. I took a shot at one or two that were breathing down my neck where I didn't have any choice. I only did things in AA that I liked doing, which is not a lot. And so I kept relapsing, and I don't know why I'm relapsing, because if you could have put me on a lie detector and said, Bob, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I would have said, yes, I am. And it would have said I was telling the truth. But it wasn't the truth. Because I didn't know what any lengths was. I didn't know it involved amends, it involved service, it involved self-sacrifice, it involved deep inconvenience. I thought I was willing to go to any lengths because I was willing to go to a few meetings and not drink. And my alcoholism overcomes me with that low level of involvement. I have no defense against it. And so I drank, and I drank, and I drank. And 1978, I got sober the last time in a detox in Las Vegas, of all places. It's a weird place to get sober. In Pennsylvania, in rehabs, if the counselor would have said, hey, Bob, we suspect you're either going to die or get sober one day. Make a list of 100 possible cities you might get sober in. Vegas wouldn't have been on the list. But we were brought together by divine appointment, and it was exactly where I needed to be. And I love living in Las Vegas. If your primary purpose is to help other drunks, it is a target-rich environment. Square business, man, I'm telling you. And no matter how narcissistically self-involved and depressive you may be by nature, if you throw yourself in the middle of an environment like that and you devote yourself to helping other people, God will use that to pull you. Did an angel get its wings? What? God will use service in Alcoholics Anonymous to pull you up off of you and set you free. And that's been my story. I've made a lot of mistakes. I made mistakes in the arenas of sex and job and money and straightening people out in AA that didn't need straightening out. And there's mistakes to be made here. I've made them. But the one thing I've done consistently nonstop for best of 4 decades is I've never not done 12-step work. And I've never not sponsored people, and I've never not had hospital and institution commitments. And I didn't do all of this because I'm an altruistic guy. I got a sponsor who was a doer. And he wanted me to be involved in every aspect of Alcoholics Anonymous. He wanted me to do a lot of 12-step work. He wanted me to do service commitments at the group, intergroup, general service. He wanted me to serve God's kids and to serve Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, a funny thing happens if you do that. And some of you who are parents know this. Anything that you serve and sacrifice for, you end up loving. You can't help it. And it started my love, through the action, started my love affair with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember I was new, and I just tried to take my own life. And I was in a point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization and hopelessness where I was horrible. And I went and I asked this man to sponsor me, and he's on this kick because he's a doer, right? He's on this kick about helping people, doing 12-step work. He wanted me to bring meetings back into the detox I just got out of. He wanted me to sign up for the state penitentiary out in Jean, Nevada. He wanted me to just be I had to say yes. They asked me to be a secretary of a meeting at 3 months sober. I wasn't sober long enough. He told me to do it anyway, take it if they ask again. Just to say yes to Alcoholics Anonymous. Say yes. And when he first started hitting me with this helping people thing, I understand what he's saying. I always suspected AA was a bunch of do-gooders. And I'm not against that, but I said to him, because I'd had a lot of therapy, I said, don't you think I should work on me for a while? And he reared back and he said, work on you? You've done quite enough of that. Stop it. When he said that, I thought, I have done a lot of that. I primal screamed. I did a lot of stuff. And the more stuff I did to fix me, the more broken I seemed to feel. And the more lost I was. And what he's really saying to me is just to set yourself aside, Bob. Set yourself aside here and go help people. I started doing it. And it started slowly changing my life. It started to change my depressive nature. I discovered the exact same thing that Bill Wilson talks about in his story. And Bill Wilson and my sponsor are both depressives, which means a depressive is a person that's by nature so obsessed with themselves and their problems and their future and their feelings that I just implode me with me. I just smother myself with myself. And Wilson discovered, and it's in his story, that he would be filling up with self-pity and resentments to the point where he said he was afraid he was going to drink again. And in desperation, he'd go down to Towns Hospital and he'd ask Dr. Silkworth if there was a drunk he could talk to. And he'd spend several hours talking to this poor, pathetic puke. And he said, I'd be miraculously uplifted and set on my feet. He referred to it as a design for living that works in tough going. And I started to experience that freedom. And I didn't know what it was. I know what it is today. It's freedom from the bondage of self. Alcoholics, the actions of this altruistic organization called Alcoholics Anonymous, that's behind its primary, number one above everything purpose, which is helping other drunks, is designed to do what alcohol did for me. And that's to set me free. To get me up off of me so I can be here in the world where you are and where God is. So I'm pulled out of my natural self-absorbed nature. And I started doing that, and it started lighting me up. And I started sponsoring guys, and it was spectacular. And December 14th, 1934, Bill Wilson had an experience the day before he left Towns Hospital. And he had a surrender thing with the help of Ebby and the rudimentary process of the Oxford group. And what he had was an experience that had not been unique. William James talked about those experiences. They've been happened for alcoholics for centuries. But there was some, and Bill describes the experience as being in a high mountaintop with a wind from a high mountaintop blowing through him, and the lights had gotten brighter, and it was like that was what is often referred to as Bill's spiritual experience. That's the moment when God broke through and changed the world. But I don't think that's the moment. I think the moment came after that, when Bill's real awakening was he was laying in his hospital bed after the bright light experience, and a piece of new information came into the world. He laid there and he said that he knew that there were millions, if not thousands, of other alcoholics out there, that maybe he could help them. Maybe they could benefit by this, whatever this was. And he became convicted that this is what his purpose was in life. And his actions exemplified that. He got out of Towns Hospital December 15th, 1934, and threw himself into trying to help drunks. And he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have a sponsor. There was no chapter working with others. There was nothing. He didn't have nothing except a conviction that was born out of an awakening that if he devoted his life to helping other people, that he might stay free. And he did. And in the course of 5 months, from December 15th, when he exited Towns Hospital, to May 10th, 1935, Bill worked with 96 failures. Nobody stayed sober. And he persisted. I think I'd get up to 10 and say, well, this isn't me. I mean, you know what I mean? He persisted. He never stopped. And it was a work in progress. And as he went along doing this, he learned what to do and he learned what not to do. He learned what to say. He learned what worked. He learned what didn't work. And he was honing a path that millions and millions of us would follow over the ensuing years to save our lives. And Wilson brought a light into the world. And that's the one difference with William James, is when he looked at some of these people that had these conversion experiences, what often happens, and you know this from your own groups, these born-again conversion experiences, they fade. I was doing a workshop one time on step 2, and I asked for a show of hands, how many people in this room have had a born-again experience and then drank after that experience? And over a third of the room raised their hands. God's the answer, but here's the problem. I got too much of me between me and God. And all the faith in the world doesn't change that. It's only actions. And I started this process. And I'll tell you a couple things. You know, I run into people in Alcoholics Anonymous. We live in a bad age. You know, Wilson said something in the book this is back in the 30s, and I think this was true in the 1930s. I don't know that it's true anymore. He says we had but two alternatives, just two. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we can, and that can be sober, or to seek spiritual help. I think the medical and psychiatric profession has thrown a third alternative in there. And so we're getting a lot of people sober 20 years, and they're depressed. And rather than throw themselves deeper into the solution, they listen to their head, and their head says things to them like, I've done all that. Yeah, not this year. Or I've run into people that they're in bad shape. And we lose people. We lose a lot of old-timers from suicide, people who know they must not and cannot drink. They get it that a drink of alcohol does not help them anymore. It makes them more full of self-pity and depression. They get that it doesn't work. It's no longer a solution. Yet they suffer from untreated alcoholism, and they have to do something, and so many of them take their own lives. I get that. When I feel hopeless and my emotions are putting the screws to me and I don't see any way out of the trap, suicide looks like an escape for a guy like me. And we're losing a lot of these people. And every time I meet one of them that's getting ready, that's on that road, I always ask them this. I only ask them one question. So how many people do you sponsor? Here's what I get a lot. Well, I don't sponsor anyone. That's not my niche. Really? Why do you say that? Well, 15 years ago when I got sober, I sponsored 2 or 3 guys. None of them stayed sober. I said, well, Wilson went through 96 people. You've got 93 more to go through before you can draw that conclusion, right? And what do you got to lose here? You've tried you've used AA for your own relief and your own gratification and your own self-grandizement. Why don't you surrender here and make AA the center of your life and make your life about helping God's kids? You've spent all these years helping you. How's that worked out for you? And the guy said, well, I don't know how to do that. Nobody asked me to sponsor them. Well, we're not about that. Dr. Bob never asked Bill Wilson for help. Matter of fact, he sat in my living room, told us the story. He didn't even want the help. He didn't even want to go, but he was guilty. He got drunk on Mother's Day and screwed it up. And Ann's not literally pulling him by the ear, but kind of emotionally pulling him by the ear and made him go see this Yankee from New Yorker. Didn't want to do it. And the world changed. Because Dr. Bob wasn't asking for help, Bill Wilson went and sought out Dr. Bob, not because Dr. Bob was an alcoholic, but because Bill was. And he didn't know much, but he knew one thing. He knew that his hope was in helping someone else. And so I tell people, I say, listen, you can sponsor people. You don't think you can, but here's the actions you have to take. Find yourself a fishing pond. Get it like a detox, early release, county jail, treatment center, halfway house. Find a place where there's a whole bunch of newcomers gathered, right? And go there. And I go there. I've been going to those places a couple times a week for 4 decades. And I go there for the same reason that Willie Sutton said he robbed banks. He said, that's where the money is. Find yourself a fishing pond. And then go there and get there a little early, chat up a couple guys, Try to get around to the aspect of sponsorship. Tell them from your experience how important it's been. I never made it. Just me, myself alone, I would have died. Going to meetings would have died. I wouldn't have made it without a sponsor. It's very important. Do you have a sponsor? And if they say no, just say, look, I'm not here to impose myself on you, but it is important for me, this is right out of the book, to help other alcoholics. And if you would want to be sponsored, it would be my privilege to do that. And here's my phone number. And you'll do that, and every once in a while, you'll see something amazing. You'll see a person's face change because they have been fighting within themselves with their own fear about asking someone, and they can't get through the fear to ask someone to sponsor them. And you just solved their problem. And I promise you, you do that once or twice a week, in the end of a year or two, you'll sit in a restaurant somewhere in a booth with people you sponsor. Because God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. And it's the joy, when it says it's the joy of living, I'll tell you, it's amazing. And you know, there's that old adage about we don't get it, or we can't keep it unless we give it away. I think we don't even get it. I think God works through the people that you try to help you. It doesn't, logically, it doesn't make sense, but it has been my experience. I've been on the verge of sinking into depressions in sobriety, and my phone will ring, or I'll end up on a 12-step call, or end up giving some guy a ride or something like that, and it saves Bob from Bob. I can't tell you how many times I started these midday meetings at this Skid Row detox in Las Vegas years ago because I just needed a place to go occasionally to get out of myself. It's not because I'm a good guy. I just need, that's my medicine. One of the guys I sponsor refers to 12-step work, and he goes, "Oh, that's the good dope." And I needed more good dope, so I started these noon meetings. And I'll tell you, there were mornings in my business. I had some times in business where I got real scared. And I got very uncomfortable. And I go down to that detox, consumed. I'm walking in there. I don't even want to be in there. I need to be back at the office putting out fires, but I've made a commitment to go there. And I walk in there consumed with myself. Consumed with my problems, with a level of anxiety that borders on nervous breakdown, and I'll come out of there like, the whole universe is lined up, everything's perfect. How did that happen? Well, because I went in there and I forgot myself for a little bit, and in my absence, God lined the universe back up again, the way it's always designed to be. There never was a problem. Except in here. And you brought me to the great reality, as you always do, as service always brings me into the great reality. I remember being in a deep depression, about a year and a half sober, I suppose, and I didn't know what else to do. I'd been to a couple meetings that day already, and I'd prayed. And I talked to my sponsor, and I am not doing well here. And I went to a late night meeting and ended up through a bizarre series of circumstances taking a guy who was coming off a run, I thought he was going to have a seizure. He was in bad shape. And I ended up taking him to the county hospital and sitting with him for about 4 or 5 hours, I guess, until they eventually admitted him. And in that 4 or 5 hour window, sitting in that emergency room, waiting room, something happened to me. And what had happened to me is as the guy started in his desperation opening up to me and telling me about how he can't even drink away the shame and remorse anymore from the things he'd done to his family. How he couldn't even have the courage to kill himself, and he'd wished he could for some time. And how he doesn't even know why AA would bother with him because he always drinks again. And he's telling me my story. He is more inside of me and the guy I was when I got here than I ever heard in a meeting. He's like nailing me. And somewhere in the wee hours of the morning, I fell in love with that guy. And I just remember I remember this feeling coming over me where how he was doing and his welfare was the most important thing in the universe. And I came into that, and there was nothing more important than me and my problems and my feelings and me. And now what's happened is in my concern and desire to help him, he's lifted me up off of me. And I'm free. I remember driving home that morning, the sun's coming up. You know how in Vegas we get these sunrises from the west end or the east end of town, and it's like a pink. I'd seen that 1,000 times. I had never really seen it that morning because I'm never really here. I'm up here. That morning I was there. I could feel the presence of God in that car. I felt a rightness about my life. Everything made sense. It made perfect sense to me. I know exactly why I was alive. That was the morning when I understood, when I had an awakening. And the awakening is I now know why these old-timers have been pushing me to do 12-step work. Because they knew something I didn't know. They knew that no matter how depressive my nature was, how obsessively self-involved and narcissistic my tendencies might be, that if I would continue to take those actions, that one day you'd hear this loud, as my head would come up out of my butt, and I would actually show up in God's world. And there was I was very present that morning going home, and I was crying in the car because I got it. There was a rightness about it, and it's beautiful. It's the joy of living. So I'm a big advocate of pushing people to do this. When it says in the book that it works where all other activities fail, they're not kidding, man. I'm telling you. If your wife just ran off with your best friend, or you just found out you have stage 4 cancer, or one of your children is in a lot of trouble, or you're in danger of losing everything financially you own, reading profundities in the book isn't going to help you. The words of your sponsor will sound like that Charlie Brown character, wah, 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 right? What you need when the fog of self-centered fear rolls down over you, you need a seeing eye newcomer to walk you out of the fog. And when Wilson says it works where all other activities fail, man, he's not kidding. He's not kidding. And I'll tell you a couple stories. I'm very grateful to my first sponsor. He was a doer. You know, I went my first general service conference. I heard a trustee say something that I've never forgot. And you know, people throw statistics around, and you never know if they're accurate, but I think sometimes they can be ballpark. You know. And this trustee said something I never forgot. He said he believed from his experience that 95% of the 12-step work and service in Alcoholics Anonymous was done by 5% of the fellowship. And then he said that 5%, as long as they remain a 5%er, in other words, keep taking those actions, they never drink again. And that has been my experience. And when I said that, I realized I was in a pocket of doers in AA. My first sponsor he said yes to everything in AA. He was one of the founders of the Roundup. He was the retreat, the Samaritan House. He was on the board of the Thai Club. He'd been a delegate. He'd been years in general service, intergroup service. I met him because he brought meetings twice a week into the detox, which was weird to me. I'm sitting in the detox, and here comes this nice dressed guy, comes into the detox, and I thought, he comes in there twice a week, he evidently does not have a life. He had a huge life. He had a house up on the hill with tennis courts and gardens, and he owned a very successful business. He traveled, he had a freedom. He had a tremendous life. But it was all predicated on the knowledge that it was a gift from God that comes from grace. and to keep the grace active, he had to keep out of himself, and he had to keep helping God's kids. And he was a good example for me. He was my example. And I followed him around. I did what he did. And it started to change my life. And, thank God for that, because there comes times in your sobriety where if you aren't doing everything that we do here, there come times when you're dead. You're a dead man. When you will fill up with yourself in such emotional pain that you're in danger of drinking or taking yourself out. And I think sometimes we don't even know it. We're building a weapon against that day to defend us against ourselves. We don't even know we're doing it. In my 11th year of sobriety I went through, it was a tough year for me. It was a really tough year. I was married to a gal that I met in the program, and we had a 2-year-old daughter. And I thought we had the perfect marriage. I mean, I just that couple months before did a relationships workshop. It was amazing. So I'll never do another one of those again, I'll tell you. Well, then I discover that my wife is the last year of my marriage is sleeping with my sponsee best friend, one of my favorite guys, right? And in one day, I got my daughter, who's 2 years old, who I loved. To this day, she's the light of my life. Her and my ex-wife of 12 hours moved in with my best friend, all in one sweep. And I was insane. I was sponsoring a guy who was, his family owned one of the casinos, and he'd even, at one point, I talked him into setting me up with an appointment with a hitman. It was, jeez. No, it's just a true story. Thank God it didn't happen. God worked through some people and brought me to my senses. But I mean, that's evidentiary of how insane I was. I mean, I was insane. I've never been sicker, drunk or sober than I was at that little window right there. It was crazy. It was nuts. And the worst part of all of it was I missed my daughter. I know what heartache is. It's a longing. And I missed my daughter. I had that longing. And I legally had the right to see her. I just didn't know if I had the emotional ability. Because I had to go over to where they're living together to see her. I can't even put into words the emotional resistance in me. But I longed to see her so bad, I eventually walked through the difficulty, made an appointment, went over and picked her up for the day. And she's 2 years old. She is such a sweetheart. She's so cute. She just break your heart looking at her. She's just gorgeous. And I take her by the hand. I pull, I leave where they're living together, and I get in our car, and we go out, and first thing we do, I wanted to have a day that she was going to like, so we went to Chuck E. Cheese. Terrible pizza. Oh. For about $80, you can win a 10-cent ring, my daughter loves that stuff. And then I had this thing with my friend Julie, who was involved with the Legends in Concert ranch that was owned by the people that had that show. And we went there to play with animals, and they had Shetland ponies and all kinds of stuff. My daughter loves animals, and she was pony crazy. And so they brought one of those little ponies out, and we got to sit her on the pony in the corral and walk her around. She loved it. We're done. And my daughter, we're sitting at this picnic table next to the corral. My daughter's thirsty, so she told me she was thirsty. So I left her with my friend Julie. I said, I'm going to go across the yard to the stables. There's a soda machine. Get some soda pop, and I'll come back. And I'm doing that, and I'm coming back across the yard. And as I get close to the picnic table, I hear Julie say to my daughter, Kate, here comes your daddy. And Kate looks up at me, looks at Julie, and says, that's not my daddy, Craig's my daddy. I'll tell you something. It felt like somebody put a blade up underneath my rib cage. But I didn't say nothing. You learn on those streets and in those cell blocks to push those feelings down and look stoic, and I did that. And played with my daughter the rest of that day, and I had to take her home for dinner, and I drive up to the front of where they're living together, and I take her by the hand and walk her up to the door and ring the doorbell, and the frickin' happy couple answers the door, and she jumps into his arms, and I turn around and I go back to my car, and I get in my car and I drive about a block or so away, and I just pull over to the side of the road, man. I'm a basket case. And I'm sitting in my car and I'm sobbing and talking to God at the same time like a crazy person. And I'm saying to God, God, I love my daughter, but I can't see her anymore. This hurts too much. I'm not big enough for this. And it's killing me. And I don't know what else to do. I can't take this. And I look at the clock on the dashboard, and I'm supposed to meet this idiot newcomer down at the SOS Club. I told him I'd take him across town to a big book, step study, a 12 by 12 step study. And so I'm going to be late to meet him. Got to hurry. I don't want to meet him. I really want to go home and think. I mean, no, really. I'm that guy. You know, my life gets on me. I just want to hole up somewhere like a wounded animal and think, man. I'm that guy. But you guys have brainwashed me to do what you say you're going to do and show up where you say you're going to show up. And so I'm racing across town. He's get to Main Street. There he is in front of the SOS Club. Get in the car, and we start across town to this Rule 62 12 by 12 study group. And he's not even in the car but a minute or two, and he starts to cry as he tells me that he'd been denied by the courts again to see his kids. And I'm looking at him. And I'm thinking, there's only one person that can stop you from seeing your daughter, Bob. That's you. And I thought, I'll see her again next week. And the week after, and the week after. And she is the light of my life. We've been all over the world together. We've scuba dived in New Zealand. We've toured Australia together. We've been all over Europe. We've been to Hawaiian Islands, all through the Caribbean together. We've snow skied in the mountains, and we've dove in the islands. And she's my little girl. And that new guy thinks I'm helping him. Right? God works through the people that you help to help you. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't make sense, but the helpers get the help. If you come here and it's all about you, and you come here needy, as we all do, and you want relief, and you want to do for you, and you're a taker here, I'm telling you, all you're going to get's alcoholism, because that's all we got. I mean, we don't have nothing else, you know. If you don't think that's true, go to a meeting that starts off, does anybody have a problem? And then see who gets help there. I mean, you know. But the helper gets the help. And sometimes those of us that are willing to inconvenience ourselves and do this stuff, we get to actualize a relationship with God that it seems easily grows stale or becomes mundane or commonplace. Or maybe I take it for granted and I don't even know it. You know, we have great miracles that happen in our lives. Unfortunately, they happen in people's lives who take stuff for granted. It's like God can transform you, give you the best life beyond anything you could ever imagine. And it's like, yeah, but what have you done for me lately? You know what I mean? We're funny people like that. Because the shine wears off of stuff easily for a guy like me. But if I'm working with newcomers, I will remember what I have a tendency to forget. And I'll remember it through watching them and through their experience. As I see God come into their life and solve their problems, I'll remember what He's done in mine. And it reaffirms. There's an old story about this Catholic priest walking down the street, and he gets to the bottom of this big hill, and he looks up at the top of the hill, and there's this little 3-4-year-old kid on a tricycle up there. This is a steep hill, and at the bottom of the hill, there's this big bump, and he thinks, oh my God, no. Oh no, that kid's not going to come down that hill on that tricycle. Sure enough, here he comes down that hill, and he's coming like a bat out of hell down that hill, and the priest is like, oh, and he hits that bump on the bottom, and he flips over, and he tears his pants up, and his knee's all bloody, and the kid gets off the bike and goes, God damn it. The priest goes, oh, son, don't say that. Oh, don't say that. Say, God bless me. The little kid goes, oh, okay, Father, God bless me, I'm sorry. And he goes about his business. About a week later, here comes that priest down that road. He gets to the bottom of that hill, looks up. Oh, my God, here's that stupid kid again. And sure enough, he comes barreling down that hill. He hits that bump, flips over. The front wheel of that tricycle's caved in. His pants are all tore up, bloody knees. And he gets off the bike, looks at the priest, and goes, God bless me. And the wheel straightens out. The pants sew together. The cuts go away. And the priest goes, God damn it. Right? And I've had those experiences with people I sponsor. Well, the guy's in trouble. You want to help him, and you don't know what to say, and you say something, well, just to make it go away. You say, well, just pray about it. And the wheel straightens out, and oh my God, it's amazing. I need that. I really need that. I get jaded by my own recovery sometimes, I just need it. I'm an everyday member of Alcoholics Anonymous. When Wilson says our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others, their needs, and how we can work for them. Now, I'm not going to tell you I do that constantly, but I'll tell you there's never a day that goes by where I'm not at least talking to 10 people, at least, sometimes 60, but a lot. I'm having conversations with people I sponsor. I'm an everyday member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to a meeting up here Friday afternoon because I don't want to just come to a conference. I like to go into real Alcoholics Anonymous, I like to go and see what you guys do in your home groups, right? Watch how you reach out to the new people. Watch how no matter what's going on in your life, there'll be somebody new in the meeting and you'll shift it all around and you'll forget yourself to say something to help them. I need to see that and re-see it and re-see it to remember why I'm here. That I'm not here for me. I'm not here. Believe me, I have a great life. I have a wonderful house. I have a financial security. I'm spoiled. In the third step promise, one of the third step promises, it says having a new employer, being all powerful, would provide what we need if we can do two things, and that's keep close to him. Me and God have a relationship. Some days better than others. But we have a relationship and perform his work well. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what that is. You read that book. It's the new default position. We turn our attention to someone we can help. It's like what Alcoholics Anonymous is trying to do to a selfish, self-consumed, self-obsessed person like me who's a depressive and is neurotic and just doing horrible is you're trying to free me up get me off of me. And you're trying to do that and replace my initial primary purpose that I had when I came here, which was me. I think everybody I know we come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Our primary purpose is me. How I feel, my relief. And to push that aside and replace it with another number one purpose, a purpose greater than myself, and that's to help God's kids. There is nothing more divine than that. The Buddhists call it bodhisattva. Every spiritual movement, religion in the world reveres and knows the necessity in helping others. And every step, I think, every step in Alcoholics Anonymous is to serve this end. Starting with the decision in step 3. That victory over these difficulties was self. Victory over them are going to bear witness to those I would help. It means means I'm going to have to help people here. And in step 7, it's not about, I'm not asking God to take away the things that stand in the way of me and my happiness, to stand in the way of my usefulness. And step 10 and 11 is we try to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And you see, it's never been about me. It's just my own self-obsession that tries to make it about me. And my life is really good just to the extent that it's not about me. And step 12 seems to be the actualizing thing in that. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous because I make it important to me. And I try to serve it. I love the guys I sponsor because I try to make them important to me. And it's not, and I'm not telling you I'm enthusiastic about all this stuff all the time. There are commitments I have that I just think, oh, I don't want to do this. And I always return phone calls, and I get a lot of phone calls. Like sometimes I get off a plane and there's 20 or 30 people to call back, and 5 of them want to talk about their relationship. Oh, shoot me. Oh, Jesus. I got one I got to call back when I'm done here today. And he's, yeah, I know it's coming. But I love these guys because I make them important to me through my actions. I serve them. And you can't not love what you serve. And so I say yes to Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes it's inconvenient. I think when I took that decision in step 3, what I was really doing something is so against me and my character, is that I'm going to try to take a position from now on that my life is not my own. It's God's. That means that I can't be a me first guy anymore. Now, I wish I could tell you I've been able to do that, but I do enough of it, I guess. I say yes enough of the time that I feel connected here, and I feel like I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I trust God most days. Trusting God's the big battle here. Because my own clamoring inside of me, my own selfish nature never seems to go away. But I stay relatively free from it, just to the extent that I make what we do here the most important thing. Make the most important thing the most important thing. And you only do that by your actions. And so if I could do it, nothing else this weekend, except maybe there's one person here that's depressed, and you're on more borrowed time than you imagine. And maybe if you don't change something within the next year, you're not going to be here next year. And you don't know that. If I could say something to push you and nudge you into this altruistic movement called Alcoholics Anonymous, where you're going to try to forget yourself and serve God's kids, then maybe I've done something good this weekend. If I could just get one person. Because we die of alcoholism here. And there's more recovery in AA today than there has been on the history of the planet. And yet, most of us die of alcoholism. Some of us die of alcoholism while attending the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's so bizarre. We come here, and the self-serving thing is so powerful within me, so strong. I want to come here and I want to get everything I can get out of Alcoholics Anonymous and never make the transition from the taker to the giver. And it's a sad way to go. I have a great sponsor today. He's rough sometimes. My commitment to God is demonstrated in my commitment to be sponsorable. Now, I know that my sponsor is not God, but he's kind of like God's lieutenant here. And there's a covenant in AA: when two or more of us come together for the purpose of recovery, God is in the midst. Something happens when two of us get together and all we care about is helping each other, that God shows up. And I love that. My sponsor surprises me. I tell you, I just had this thing. He really surprised me recently. I went to him with two things, knowing what he was going to say, and I was prepared for a little bit of a tongue lashing, just because I sort of wanted to even ask him if this was a possibility. It had to do with some self crap, and he surprised me. And then there have been other times when I've gone to him, and he was so kind. He was so nice about this. He told me a story about when he had a similar dilemma, and I've gone to him other times where I've been so giving that they should build a statue of me at GSO, right? Just, oh, Bob. I've been that guy, and he'll cut my legs out from under me. Because he knows what should be starved and he knows what should be fed. I don't. Because I'm myopic. I don't see what you see at times. Now, I've had some awakenings in Alcoholics Anonymous, and for the most part, I've begun pretty much to see in me what you see in me. But when I'm afraid, and I get me right here, I can't see it. I can't see me. I can't. Because I'm myopic. Because what I'm looking for, I'm looking with. And that's why I need a sponsor. And that's why I need sponsees. And there's an accountability. And there is leverage in step 6 in people I sponsor. I'll tell you, I think that there's more accountability in the people I sponsor than there is and I have accountability with my sponsor. But when you have a bunch of guys in your life that you really care about, and you start to wake up to the fact that you are the first example of how to live this way of life that they see, I'll tell you something. If you're like me, it makes you want to be a better example. If it was just me, I don't care. But I don't want to do that to you. And so it helps me to come to the table with step 6 on a lot of things. There's an accountability in that I just love. So if you're new here, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you came here like I came here. Maybe when you quit drinking, you're good. Or maybe when you quit drinking, you just start noticing how stupid people are. And you figure it's your greatest gift. And you find yourself becoming more and more right and more alone and more depressed and more self-obsessed and full of worry. Maybe you have what I got. Maybe you have an illness that really starts where the bottle ends. Maybe you're like me. And maybe you'll find what Bill Wilson found in 1934. Maybe you'll find what I found in 1978, what my sponsor found in 1958, and what members of Alcoholics Anonymous with chronic alcoholism have discovered over the decades. That this thing will work, but it takes action. I'll tell you a little story and I'll end. I stole this from my sponsor. I tell it better than he does. I heard him share this on a cassette in 1980. He shared this story at the International. And it's a great story. It's in alcoholism. Wilson uses the shipwrecked analogy, and there is a solution. And it's very apropos, because when you hit a bottom from drinking, you're totally alone, like you're shipwrecked at sea, treading water out in the middle of nowhere, and you're gonna die, and you know it, and you're scared to death. And there you are treading water, and you don't know how long you're going to be able to do this, and it's frightening. And you look up, and you see the weirdest thing you've ever seen. Sitting on top of the water, no boat, nothing, two goofy-looking guys. One looks a little bit like Tim, the other one a little like Jason. And they're pretending like they're rowing something, and there's no boat there, there's nothing. They're just sitting on top of the water, and they're coming towards you. And you go, oh, this is creepy. My name's Tim, my name's Jason. We're from Alcoholics Anonymous. We got God in these beautiful 12 steps, solve all your problems. And you go, man, you got nothing there. There's not even a boat. Leave me alone. Just go away. And they grow off. Next thing you see is coming over the horizon is this big chrome ocean liner. It says treatment center on the side. They got medications, and they got group therapy, and they got biofeedback and vocational rehabilitation specialists, and they got dietitians and members of the opposite sex. And, oh my God, and people with multiple doctorate degrees, and you suspect someone of your depth and complexity will need all of that. Not the two idiots in the invisible boat. And you get on board, and it's amazing, man. You're watching the Father Martin movies, and you're learning about the brain chemistry and the aspartame, and oh, man. Till you get to that place, you're so full of knowledge. And the ego always imagines that it will find power in knowledge. And you're so full of knowledge, you think, I got this. And then it's over the side. And there you are treading water as the USS Treatment Center sails off to sea. And there you are treading water with your $30,000 graduation chip and your $20,000 big book. And you're hanging in there, but you're losing, man. You're going down, and you know it. Just about the time where you can't tread water anymore, you look up, and here come those two assholes in that invisible boat. And they row up to you. My name's Tim. My name's Jason. We're from Alcoholics Anonymous. We have God in these beautiful 12 steps that solve all your problems. And you got nothing, man. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. But you're weak and you're broken and you're scared, and that you let them pull you on board. And there you are sitting on top of the water. And the truth is, you don't know what's holding you up. As some of us have sat in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous at a year sober, and the truth is, we don't know how that's happened, because we've never been sober that long before. And we can't see what's holding us up. You say to the guy on the boat, you say, what do I do? And they say, row. Row? What do you mean row? There's no boat. What are you talking about? No, row. Row what? There's no oar. No, just go like this. Oh, come on. No, just go like this. Just go like this. No, I'm not going to. No, just go like this. All right, I hope no one sees me. And a funny thing happens. The more you row that boat, the more substantial it becomes. And it will become so substantial you can raise a family in that boat. You can have a business in that boat. You can sail around the world, and you can pick up other drowning men and women in that boat. You can have a life in that boat beyond your wildest dreams. But what often happens to some of us is the ego returns, and Harry Tiebout talks about this, the amazing recuperative powers of the alcoholic ego. It grows back like a bad tumor. And we don't know that happens when it happens. And with the return of the ego comes entitlement. And my case becomes special. And I become special. And I'm not one of the herd anymore. I'm a special member of Alcoholics Anonymous. When you're a special member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you don't have to row anymore. Let the newer people row. And from the moment you stop rowing the boat, it starts to dematerialize. And it doesn't throw you in the drink overnight. Sometimes it takes years of self-indulgence, years of replacing your primary purpose of helping other people with the primary purpose of you. Years of putting Alcoholics Anonymous on the back burner. Years of serving yourself before you serve God. Years before it starts to dismantle. And then all of a sudden, and I've talked to dozens of people in detoxes. Vegas is a wonderful place to live, because if you're sober 25 years and in Johnson City, Tennessee, and you drink again, Vegas calls you. And we get these old timers, they end up on the streets of Vegas, and it doesn't matter. You could have $1 million in your IRA. Vegas will take that away from you so fast you'd make your head spin. And they end up in our recovery houses or in our detox, and it's always the same. There's a lot of myths in AA. People say, well, they stopped going to meetings. No, I know people who went to 2 meetings the day they drank. They stopped praying. I've sponsored clergy who prayed more in one day than most of us pray in a week, who drank themselves to death. What's a consistent common denominator? Go up to a guy who's drank with over 10 years of sobriety and ask him this question. Say, it's really a shame you're in detox. But if you'll give me the phone numbers of all the new guys that you're working with in their first 90 days, I'll be glad to call them for you and tell them your sponsor is in detox. You're not going to get a list of numbers, because their life became self-serving, and that's the one common denominator. Wilson says nothing so much ensures immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. That's as true with 39 years plus sobriety as it was with 39 days. Thanks for listening.